Hello everyone, Freemantle here. I've titled this video, Capitalism What It Is and Isn't. I could have subtitled it, Probably Not What You Think, because the idea that America's economy is capitalism is false. In fact, it's preposterous. It's not well described as capitalistic either, even though areas of the economy differ in how stringently they're controlled. Financial services, education, anything having to do with healthcare, very heavily regulated long before Mr. Obama, while information technology, the computer industry, has been minimally regulated. But to call the American economy capitalism is wrong. Capitalism is not what we're living with. Capitalism is not a system in the sense of a regular, routine, or standard way things are done. It's not a fixed framework for doing things. Capitalism is not basically or essentially an economics phenomenon. Capitalism occurs in the context of producing and exchanging goods and services, but that doesn't make it basically or essentially a matter of economics, any more than the question of whether you should go to bed with the flu is essentially a question about furniture, the bed. There are no types of capitalism. Periods in a history of capitalism might be named for characteristic production, as with the phrase industrial capitalism. But there are no types of capitalism, such as market capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, free market capitalism, liberal capitalism, crony capitalism, state capitalism, welfare state capitalism, or democratic capitalism. The last four common names, crony capitalism, state capitalism, welfare state capitalism, democratic capitalism, are contradictions, of which the most inexcusable is democratic capitalism. The phrase liberal capitalism is muddled. Liberal as in the welfare state, or liberal as in so-called classical liberalism, a political and intellectual movement in the 19th century for capitalism, among other things, and so quite opposite to welfare state liberalism. The phrases free market capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, and market capitalism are redundancies. Capitalism is not some particular product mix of an economy, such as frivolous junk rather than medical care, a particular structure of producing units, corporations or sole ownerships, operating purpose of the business, paying dividends or helping the needy, internal operating mode, hierarchy or democratic decision-making, a certain operating scale, farming 20 acres or 20,000, or historical industries, shipping, banking, companies, Standard Oil, IBM, or personalities, Harvey Firestone, Bill Gates. Capitalism is not any of those. The usual definition of capitalism is private ownership of the means of production. Well, this is a start at best. What is private? What is ownership? What are means of production? In fact, this is an excellent definition for liberal purposes. The most powerful means of production we know is the mind of the human being. The liberal could say, thinking about the minds of people, private ownership of the means of production, huh? That's capitalism, all right. The shortest good characterization I know comes from the American economics writer Henry Hazlitt. He said, capitalism is the name we give to political freedom in the economic sphere. That's all it is. It's not an agent. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't love or hate anybody, as some liberals have said. It's not the sort of thing that could. It's a situation, an absence. The absence of control by the political process for purposes dictated by that process in a certain area of human activity, namely producing and exchanging goods and services. The best characterization I know that's slightly longer than Mr. Hazlitt's is from Ayn Rand. Under capitalism, she said, there is a separation between business and government in the same way, and, she said, for the same reasons that we maintain a separation between church and state. In my terms, capitalism has no political character of any kind. The government exercises no direction of production or trade in order to achieve economic goals selected by the political process. That's why I said democratic capitalism is the most inexcusable name among the so-called types of capitalism. Capitalism isn't political. Capitalism arises in the economic context because life can be so much better if we don't each try to produce everything we want. Imagine trying to fill your own tooth cavity. We do much better if we can get other people to produce what we want and to hand it over. We can do this in two ways. We can do this so they act willingly or so that they act unwillingly. Willing means they don't act under threat of injury by another person. So their being willing entails that they help us either as an act of charity or that we make it worth their while to produce what we want and to give it to us. Ordinarily, they're not going to help us as an act of charity and shouldn't, because they should be attending to their own interests. So ordinarily, there's only going to be one way to make them willing. We give them something they want badly enough to give us what we want. Capitalism is basically a way we treat one another, where people produce and exchange willingly, where the what, how much, and at what price are determined by them and not compelled by threat of harm from people standing on the outside who make and enforce the law. There you have capitalism, where we have active institutions created by that activity, like financial institutions, or supporting it, like laws against trespass. There you have an ethos and a society cast in the mold of capitalism. That's what the advocate of capitalism should be defending, and what the intellectual liberal despises. Sometimes I'm asked what the American economy is, if it isn't capitalism. People usually want to say it's a mixed economy, a mixture of capitalism and socialism, or in other words, a mixture of freedom and government regulation. I wouldn't say that. In the first place, it plays into liberal hands. A mixture, huh? Well, when something goes wrong, guess which part of the mixture the liberal is going to put the blame on. But more important, I wouldn't use a name at all. I just describe it. Because a name only points to something. A description tells people what it is. And most people don't understand capitalism in my experience, and they don't recognize non-capitalism when they see it. I'd say the American economy today is a government-controlled economy, taking all levels of the government together here. It's a government-controlled economy, but not controlled the way the Soviet officials regulated the Soviet economy. They tried to do everything by edict, production quotas, production allocations, required source materials, and so on. In America, government control takes the form of the authority the government has to enter any area of the economy at any time for any reasons the government officials have, as long as they're the authorized officials, in order to make any changes, impose any requirements, change procedures, take over businesses, break up businesses, do anything they want in running the economy. They might even stand back and allow people to conduct their economic affairs as though those people have the right to do what they want. But allow would be the key word here. The government officials may allow them to do what they want to do. That's not capitalism. 4 takeaway points from today's video. Capitalism is not a system, not basically an economics phenomenon. There are no types of capitalism, and capitalism has no political character of any kind. Capitalism is where people treat one another willingly and voluntarily in the production and exchange of goods and services. Thank you for listening.